Welcome back to the Torque Test channel. We've been testing 3-inch cutoff tools and measuring the horsepower they put out because if Edward Scissorhands was in the auto trades, he'd be flush with these little puppies instead of scissors, as we tend to use them on just about anything and everything around here. But we've been a bit narrow-sighted, only testing Milwaukee, DeWalt, and an air option around here, so let's add some budget-friendly cordless contenders, starting with the new Bauer 20-volt here from Harbor Freight. Seeing as so far we've had the most luck with more volts in the form of the DeWalt, which is a beast, we're going to blindly assume for now that that's the ticket for success in these direct-driven tools that are basically a motor with the trigger. And the new Bauer 269C-B here is about as close as you're going to get to just that. Absolutely no bells and whistles, no forward reverse switch, so you can aim sparks at something fun. Not even a variable throttle, basically just on. And that might be fair, as the price tag on this guy is a whole $50. No, not the latest brushless tech from a lithium pouch producing brand, but also that's a fair bit cheaper than an air tool, so essentially starting out ahead there. We're hoping this one's like the brushed Bauer impact driver, a bit crude but still powerful and cheap, which is a great combo sometimes. We have both 2 amp hour and 5 amp hour battery packs from this brand to see what this one can do. Next up in price is a bit of a jump in everything, size for sure. The Bauer is pretty tiny in fact. Power, perhaps a bump up in that too, and price, definitely yes. This is the Ryobi PSBCS02, which retails for about double the Harbor Freight at $99. Even ignoring Ryobi's not often convenient battery sizing, the overall silhouette of this tool is just bigger. In fact, by displacement as measured, the Bauer only comes in at 900 cc's with a 2 amp hour battery. That's pretty close to a DeWalt with a tiny power stack, and 1100 cc's with the larger 5 amp hour. The Ryobi displaces all the water with 1275 and 1375 cc's, which starts it off at a bit of a deficit here. But it does have an LED light, forward and reverse switch, easily adjustable guard, and cut depth. Basically, it's sort of what TTI can make an 18 volt like they seem to be unwilling to do with the Milwaukee, at least with 3-inch cutoff tools. In our previous die grinder testing, we learned which batteries to use for this sort of stuff to get the most bang per square inch on Ryobi tools, so we'll be doing that again. If this is anything like that die grinder, it should be pretty sweet. Alright, last up is the Ridgid, which is a step up yet again in pricing to about $120. See the link below, it fluctuates a lot. While made by the same TTI outfit, unlike the holiday tools that they sort of release around Black Friday, which are very similar between the two brands, this Ridgid is in fact very different. That's thanks mainly to the subcompact brushless motor architecture this one is using, which, depending on the angle, doesn't look to save a lot of size, but when you see it, you see it. The motor is smaller in every dimension, otherwise quite a similar tool. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? The first subcompact tool that we've tested from Ridgid didn't exactly blow us away, though I know lots of people do like those. We'll have to see if this smaller motor means more modern tech or just a downgrade in size and performance. So let's get into that and see. First up by price is the Bauer with a 2 amp hour pack. Initially, we run the tool with a 130 watt load to see what kind of RPM it can make with that, like a speed measurement of how quickly it would do a moderate task. 130 watts being the least you should expect from tools like these, and this one appears to be making on average 11,400 RPM. That's not up there. Then for watts, we see what kind of power it can keep up, reflecting the tool's capability without steadily decreasing in RPM. The 2 amp hour configured Bauer does not seem to like anything beyond that 130 watts that we use as a baseline. It can do 140, but it will cut out on you. Geez, I know this thing is a simple brush tool, but yikes. Surely that's the battery pack holding it back though. Let's take a look at the 5 amp hour. $14,550 RPM, and it's holding steady there. That's much better. Now let's see what it can do. Here's 200 watts, and it can do it, but it cuts out pretty quickly. 160, 170 watts, and yet again, it's clear the tool can keep the RPM up at those levels, but the motor is just pulling too much juice, and the tool says, nah, too much heat, we're sort of done. 160 seems to be what it can sustain. And looking at this group, that's not very good. We found the M12 cutoff tool to also cut out too early when it's cutting things, and that can do 220, 230 watts. So 160 to 170 as well, that's worse. That's as much as 0.23 horsepower as measured, and while using the tool gingerly on small tasks can still work, we find. I was using this tool to cut down this part on a light socket kit to fit a certain lampshade for the wife, and I had trouble with that at times. A hacksaw might be quicker overall. Okay, on to some pricier and hopefully more powerful pastures. This is what the Ryobi can do. Here's it with a 3 amp hour P195 battery with the DeWalt also on screen now. $16,900 RPM, that's incredibly good. Let's see what it can ultimately do maxed out. $250, $260, $270, $280, $300, 310 watts, 320, 330. Both 320 and 330 cause it to dive a bit. Needs to be ratcheted back a little to maintain that load. Yep, that definitely seems to be fine at 310 though. Here's what the more modern, larger in size 4 amp hour high performance pack can do. Let's see that. 250, 260, 270, 280, 290, 300, 280, 290, 300 is too much for it. 280 to 290 it is. It can't keep up with 290 for long. So we'll call that its peak with 280 sustained. Which, yeah, again, I suppose we prove it every time we test one of these. The 3 amp hour 21700 cell pack that they're waving goodbye to beats the larger, latest high performance pack. But either way you look at it, it's quite good. About what a 1/2 horsepower air tool does, or 0.44 horsepower. Nice. Okay, last up, the Ridgid subcompact, coming in with less displacement for its size. Maybe it can mix things up. Here's what it does from RPM under load with the similar 3 amp hour 21700 cell octane battery versus that DeWalt and Ryobi. $19,000 RPM. This thing really spins even under load. Let's dial things up and see what it can do. And dialing up is something you will need to do a lot to max this thing out. So much so that instead it maxed out the load tester, far surpassing the Ryobi on the way there and requiring a second load tester on the bench like the DeWalt needed. So let's see what it can really do now that we have both on board. This thing is impressive. So you're gonna need to sort of add these two together, which we'll be doing for you, but starting out at around 400 watts, it's 410, 420, 430, 440, 450, 460. Shooting for above that, it cuts out instantly. And well, even if you dial the tool back from 460 to 450 and 440 and 430, it will at times, well, often really cut out. This tool is both massively powerful and hugely afraid of making that power and heat. The 4 amp hour max output battery brings similar yet slightly different performance, not able to quite reach the 460 the 3 amp hour battery did, but also more comfortable, albeit with less RPM at 440 watts. It's similar but slightly less beans. This thing is a powerhouse. Using a 3 to 4 amp hour battery, it makes more than the DeWalt does with a 5 amp hour or 1.7 power stack. 430 watts sustained, 460 watts in peaks, with the other battery being pretty close as well. That puts it in second place overall and really like first place using batteries that come with these sorts of tools. So you might say just throw a 8 amp hour battery on the Ridgid then. Well, we couldn't get anything more than this 460 using other batteries. The tool cuts out just way too quickly. Really, it would cut out at 430, sometimes as low as 400 to 410 after enough use. So what's holding this thing back is really its board management, something we've seen time and time again from the TTI folks making Milwaukee die grinders and cutoff tools. Nonetheless, 0.6 horsepower with common standard batteries. Very nice surprise on this one. That subcompact motor has a lot of potential in the right application. Ryobi places third, basically like an air tool but larger. That sort of makes sense seeing it here. The new Bauer, yeah, dead last. We thought it being 20 volts would help. During the filming of this, Harbor Freight came out with a 12 volt but brushless model. Maybe that's better. I don't know. We haven't had luck with 12 volt in this category just yet. You tell us. Overall, on the higher end of the power spectrum, either it's that tools like these from TTI, you know, Ryobi, Milwaukee, Ridgid, just get hotter than most using the same amount of juice, or their nanny modes are just too intrusive. The DeWalt just doesn't care as much. You can push on it, it just digs in, so bigger batteries do more and more. The Ridgid has a bit of an artificial ceiling to it, but it's still a little monster. I think this was one of Ridgid's standout tools, and I'm surprised that this doesn't exist in red instead at this size and power. But at the price it sometimes sells at, I'm not complaining. It's by the numbers, quite literally twice the tool of the M12 for less coin. It's really good. Appreciate you joining us on this one. We make episodes like this at least every Friday. Click subscribe to see those, and thanks for watching.